in the news this week,
Yes.
Ayesha Curry,
Yes.
and her recent appearance on Call Her Daddy podcast.
Call her daddy.
Discussion around her desire not to be married or not to have children, or the sequence or the timing of those things.
When I'm listening to her, I'm thinking about that image of this family.
Yeah.
So my first reaction was like, wow, I wonder how her husband is responding and then her children, because if mommy's on a platform or a podcast saying she didn't want children, how does that make the kids feel? And then how do you explain that to your children? I know a lot of times us husbands, we may hear you, but we may not be listening.
Oh.
Or, you know what I'm saying?
You know what? I'm glad we got that on video.
Yeah.
Welcome to With Love, The Chambers.
Where life, laughter, and lasting lessons meet.
We're The Chambers, a husband and wife navigating faith, family, and everything in between.
Here we share real stories, heartfelt conversations, and a whole lot of love. Because life isn't perfect, but God's grace sure is.
So pull up a seat, grab a cup of coffee, or go ahead and sip that tea, and join us for honest talks, laughs, and the wisdom we're learning along the way. This is With Love, The Chambers.
This episode of With Love, The Chambers is proudly sponsored by the Watts of Power Foundation, where passion and purpose come together to empower the next generation. In the heart of Los Angeles, one foundation is changing the future of education. The Watts of Power Foundation, founded by Dr. Peter Watts Jr., is on a mission to raise up the next generation of Black male educators, building strong teachers, strong families, and strong communities. Through mentorship, housing, and holistic support, Watts of Power is lighting the path toward equity in education. Visit wattsofpowerfoundation.org to learn how you can help power the change. The Watts of Power Foundation, where teaching meets transformation. A big thank you to Watts of Power for supporting this episode of With Love, The Chambers. And now, back to your regularly scheduled show.
Welcome to another With Love Wednesday. I am Jamila Chambers here with my husband Rufus, and we are so thrilled and excited to welcome you to this week's podcast. We've changed locations.
Have we?
We have relocated.
Where are we at? Pray tell.
We are literally having a conversation in our conversation room, and it's so exciting to have our audience join us at home.
Absolutely.
And so you had the brilliant idea and the bright idea to say, why don't we move the podcast to the house? And here we are.
Absolutely.
So excited to welcome you all here. So excited to have this conversation with you today, Rufus. And before we do, as always, we want to give some shout outs and some recognition to our listeners, to our viewers, to those that have supported, liked, shared, subscribed, hit us in our inbox, hit the DMs, shared this message and shared this podcast with their friends and family. It's so great every single week to connect with all of you. But I wanted to especially shout out our sponsor, very first sponsor ever. So I'm so excited about them. So let's shout them out.
Absolutely. Just want to formally acknowledge our very first sponsor, Dr. Peter and Dr. Dee Dee Watts of the Watts Foundation. We just want to say thank you for partnering with us in this podcast journey. They are an amazing couple based here in Los Angeles.
Watts of Power.
That's right, in the area of education.
Yes.
So just want to shout them out and big ups to them for getting in the game with us.
Yes, and it's so thrilling and exciting for people to just support your vision. And so when we set out to do this and set out to have these conversations each and every week, you wonder if people will invest in what has been for us a labor of love. And so to have Dee Dee and Pete come alongside of us and say, hey, we are just going to help to finance the vision and help move the vision forward. It means so very much. So we thank God for you. God bless you for that. And if you would like to be a sponsor, We don't want to leave anybody out.
That's right. That's right. There's still time.
There's still time. Yes, yes. There's still time. So there'll be some information that we will link in the bio. Yeah, you have an
Absolutely.
interest in sponsoring, and it's great for people that have their own businesses, people that want to get the word out about different opportunities, great different opportunities to sponsor at different levels. And so however you want to get engaged with us, you have the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else on your heart and mind before we get into
No, let's get into
week's
this conversation. Let's get into this conversation. I think
You ready
this is
to
going to
get
be
this
an
going?
interesting one. I think this is going to be
We got to prep ourselves before this.
absolutely, absolutely.
Lots of information in the news this week.
Yes.
Uh, clips going around the TikTok streets.
Yes.
With none other than Ayesha Curry
Yes.
and her recent appearance on Call Her Daddy podcast.
Call her daddy.
Not him, her.
Okay. Well, there we go.
And there has been just this discussion around comments that she has made
Yes.
in relation to her marriage, in relation to becoming a mother, the timing of which there's been just a ton of controversy around it because there appeared to be that discussion around her desire not to be married or not to have children, or the sequence or the timing of those things. And much of the conversation and much of the discussion had really sparked from that posture of, girl, you married to Steph Curry. And so with being married to someone that is of stature, that's a professional athlete, that's a celebrity, that's a person of note, sometimes that posture of complaining, Jada Pinkett Smith comes to mind as well.
Yeah.
That posture of being vocal about things that cause discomfort within the marriage, or that conversation around being vocal around things that might not be popular tends to spark this kind of conversation. So as we get into it today, just what was your initial reaction or initial uh, smiling at me like that? Initial reaction.
Well, I have to have my sensor and filter is
Yes.
being activated so I don't
Yes.
say anything
Yes,
unbecoming of myself or my
Yes.
family in this
Yes.
moment. So
Yes.
that's what that
With
smile
with
was.
your wife and your 2
Yeah,
daughters.
yeah,
Being sensitive.
yeah. So
Being
my
sensitive,
filter
yes.
was getting started,
Yes. But initial reaction. Initial reaction.
Well, and just a little more context.
Yes.
Because people are writing articles and
Sure.
the bloggers are blogging, the vloggers are vlogging about it. Some of the folks brought up a previous podcast episode that she was on,
Yes.
I believe actually with Jada Pinkett Smith, and she was sharing how, her husband obviously gets a lot of attention from the opposite sex. And she was saying how she doesn't necessarily get that attention. And it sounded like in that conversation that she was desiring that attention,
Sure.
so some people are trying to connect that conversation with this
Yes.
conversation. And then, of course, her having that conversation on the Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith and some of the statements she has made about Will Smith and their marriage. And, we remember Jada Pinkett Smith saying that she did not desire to be married and that her mother really tried to encourage her to get married and kind of get her over the hump.
Yes.
It's so, so there's a lot there. And my first reaction was disappointment,
Mm.
for a couple of reasons. Because when I see the Curry family, I see a beautiful family. I see a obviously highly successful husband, who has built an amazing career, an amazing platform, who appears to love his wife and love his children.
Mhm.
And, Steph Curry has also been vocal about his faith, being a follower of Christ. And, we used to live in the Bay Area and we would hear about,
Yes.
him giving back to the community. So when I'm listening to her, I'm thinking about that image of this family.
Yeah.
So my first reaction was like, wow, I wonder how her husband is responding and then her children, because if mommy's on a platform or a podcast saying she didn't want children, how does that make the kids feel? And then how do you explain that to your children? You know what I mean? So that was my first reaction, disappointment, and just feeling for her husband and, for her children. So that was my first reaction. And then it went deeper into, what is this mentality
Mm,
where Aisha, from the outside looking in, has this life and this family and this husband that's probably very desirous
yes,
of
to a lot of
others. And
people,
and
yeah.
some of the women in the chat were like, "Oh, you don't want him? Tag me in. I'll marry him." You
Oh,
know what
there's
I mean?
plenty. There's
And your
plenty.
two, three, $400 million, I'll do it, child. You know what I mean? So there's clear. And again, I didn't watch the entire
I
podcast.
watched the
So I didn't
podcast.
watch the
Yes.
podcast. So maybe I missed some context, but that was my initial reaction. And I mean, from a woman's perspective, from a wife's perspective, from a mother's perspective, what was your reaction? And then when you watch the entire podcast, did you have some different revelations?
It was interesting because I think we all are savvy enough to know that what the social media machine does
Yes.
is string together
Yeah.
a narrative
Absolutely.
that's going to help with clicks, likes,
Absolutely.
ad revenue,
Absolutely.
controversy,
All of that.
all of the things. And so initially I was like, is this just strung together? It was a curiosity that certainly I hadn't heard Aisha kind of get that rap
Yeah.
of having that posture of, well, I just wanted to be my own person and I just wanted to um uh you know connect, and this was not my pathway and this was not my initial desire. And then I said, "Well, let me listen to it. Like, let me
Okay.
listen to the
Okay.
podcast and
Okay.
see if it was strung out of
Yeah.
context or if it was, earnestly just
Okay.
one of those conversations." And what I got from our good mentor, Elder Kathy Moffitt, always says people will have their childhood
Well,
at some
we
point.
keep revisiting that nugget
That
of wisdom.
same
Say it again for the people at home.
that we keep revisiting that same statement. We have a very good mentor that has told us time and time again that people will have their childhood at some moment. Like there is no skipping over these stages of maturation. If you don't have them in a certain sequence,
Yeah.
they will manifest
Yeah.
at other points and other intersections in your life. And what I got from listening to the, podcast, first of all, it's my first time being on the platform. That platform is huge,
Yeah.
and
I
that
can imagine.
podcast is huge. But a lot of the posture of the podcast itself is really, really around women's empowerment, women standing firm and affirming themselves. And for those that watch it more frequently than I do, they can get into more of the nuance of
Yeah.
it. Is it affirmation, from the context of being supportive of the ways women show up in all capacities, or is it one of those types of platforms that is affirming to the exclusion of kind of being a wife, or to the exclusion of
Yeah.
being a mother? And the podcast host is married and all the things and
Okay.
expressed the desire to be a mother. So I didn't get that feel, but
Okay.
you know how
Okay.
sometimes in those conversations there can be a
You
fine
feel like
line.
she didn't get set up. The host did not set Aisha up.
Correct. I
Okay.
didn't feel like
That's
it
good.
was, yes, I
That's
didn't
good.
feel like it was a setup, but I did feel like it was one of those things. And I don't know if you've ever felt like this, Rufus, or if our listeners have felt like this, but sometimes when you don't see something all the way through, you just start playing that what if game.
That's good.
And
That's good.
so, Aisha said, "Hey, I was an actress from the age of 3 from my hometown back in North Carolina. I met Steph back in North Carolina from church. I didn't even know he played ball. I knew him as Steph from church."
Okay.
And so they go way back like that. And so she said, I came to California to pursue a career in acting. And shortly after my arrival, I got into this relationship that has now spawned this marriage and this very public thing. And I was 22 years old when I got married. And shortly afterwards, I became pregnant within the marriage and just immediately became a wife and mother. And here I am, 22, 23, 24, like
Yeah.
really, really young. And so oftentimes, and that's what it felt like more in the conversation, that she
Okay.
was playing out
Got it.
this
In front of a camera.
in front of a camera
Got
until
it.
you're processing
Got it.
it
Yeah. In real
in
time.
real time. And it's a real
Yeah.
emotion
Yeah.
and it's a real thing and these are real questions, but there's the nuance to it, right? Because your life didn't turn out all that bad. And the reason we're listening to you is because of the life you said you didn't want, and that's the tension, and I
Yeah.
think that's what
It
people
is.
feel. And so she was playing out in real time that I had some very specific things that I wanted to do with my life. I had a very specific plan, and there was an intersection,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a change,
Yeah.
and there was something that happened differently that I didn't expect, didn't anticipate. And even you and I have a daughter that is soon to be 21. Even in processing in your 19, 20, 21-year-old mind what it means to be married, you think about it differently at 22 when it
Yeah.
happens than the years later that have passed,
Yeah.
realizing I didn't get that time to really, really understand what I was saying yes to. Really, really understand the totality of that. And I don't think anybody knows, right? Nobody
Yeah.
knows whether you get married at 22, 32, 42, or 52. Nobody knows,
You gotta
what
get
it's
in it.
like
You gotta
to be
get in
married.
it.
You can't describe it to anybody.
Yeah.
No one knows what it's like to be a parent until you become a parent. I don't care how much you study. One of those things. This is one of those times where learning is experiential. Like
Yeah.
there is no
For sure.
manual that anyone can give you to navigate through it. So I got the impression that she was processing in real time that life
Mm-hmm.
that she set out to lead versus the life that she has. And I saw those clips about the attention and I saw those clips about all those things and especially when you desire what her and Jada Pinkett have in common, they both desire to be actresses and they both
Interesting.
desire to be in the spotlight themselves. So that was this desire of theirs.
Yeah.
One thing about actors and performers and entertainers, they love that stage. We have
Yeah.
a theater kid in our own
Yeah.
home. They love that stage. And so to some degree, live in the shadow
Yeah.
of another individual, of your husband, when you desired that for yourself,
Yeah.
I think that's where that tension and that rub came in for her for sure. Um, but I wanted to talk about some of that nuance conversation because you and I kind of get into this a little bit, even within our own marriage and other people that are around us, which was the nuance piece of part of what was also concerning was that she appeared to be complaining about what other people would give their left arm for, right? To not have
Some folks
to.
I think will give half their
Oh my
body for
goodness!
that.
Well, I was being
Yeah.
cute. I was being cute. Some folks was
We
straight up
knew
saying,
we knew the neighborhoods they lived in the Bay Area.
correct, correct,
We knew
correct.
about Atherton and
Correct.
Walnut Creek
Yes.
and
Yes. Know about it.
all of that.
Know about it. Know about it.
All of
Know about it. In
Yeah.
in the Bay when you lived east of the 80 or you had a view of all three
Yeah,
bridges
yeah.
or you lived on
It's
that
all
water,
right.
it
It's
was
all
all
right.
right.
It's all right.
It was all
Yeah.
right. But I wanted to have you kinda jump in and talk about that nuance piece, which was, I hear you, Aisha, that
Mhm.
you wanted this life, you desired this life, and that happened and there was a pivot. But you know what? It's all right, sis. You have had a life
Yeah.
that probably would have exceeded, any of those things individually.
Yeah.
And you get the liberty to have your own cooking show and be on
Yeah.
these podcasts and have people listen to you,
Yeah.
etc., because of
Yeah.
that affiliation. Right or wrong, it is the curry, heavy on the curry, that that is having us have this conversation right now. High key.
Ayesha Curry.
We'll stop before
Yeah.
our kids start cringing. before before they start texting us like, "Will you stop?" Mom, that's so Gen X coded.
Yeah.
But it's the curry part of it. And so I do want to talk to you about that or have you kind of unpack that a little bit because we get some of that flack about, hey, you all are living pretty good and you got things going on to a certain degree. So you might not be in position to complain, criticize, wish for,
Yeah.
any of those things because you all right. You in a good place. You all right. So talk about that nuance piece of the part she doesn't acknowledge, the privileged part she doesn't acknowledge that made her get them shots too this week.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of meat on the bone of this conversation. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to, harness, my thoughts and my words, right up in here. But, you know, number one, of course, it's cool. You go on a podcast, you share your heart, you're processing in real time.
Yes.
And again, sometimes the grass looks greener.
Sure.
you know the grass looks greener. You have these kids, you have this husband that has a big personality, has a big career, that's like a global superstar.
Mm.
And it's probably easy for her to say, I've sacrificed my life for this man and my children.
Mhm.
And that's perfectly fine. You know, part of marriage is sacrifice.
Yes.
Part of, because the truth of the matter, he can say his level of sacrifice hasn't been just for himself, but it's been for his family,
Sure.
his legacy, his familiar name. His dad was an NBA player,
Absolutely.
so he's running with the baton and all of this. So, it's it's okay to process and share that. And back to your question about, we kind of deal with that, or people may look at us and say, wow, that's it. And then I mean, no, I don't, just to keep it a bug, I don't look at single men and say, man, I want
No,
that
right.
life. You know what I'm saying? To be honest, single men that I'm in relationship with and that I mentor, I'm like, brother, I feel for you. I feel for you because of the terrain that you're navigating in
Yes.
2025 is very challenging.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's for, men that trying to run the street, and then men that are actually looking for the one. I don't envy those brothers. Oh,
And you ain't been in the streets since 1996. So
they,
that makes
yeah. The game has
the
changed.
game has
The game has
changed. The game
changed.
has
The
changed.
the game has changed, but I guess, back to Ayesha Curry, bless her heart, there's something where she feels like she missed out on.
Sure.
And then this is another thing I feel like we should talk about in marriage. Sometimes there is an invisible, unspoken competition, that it's usually below the surface.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because every husband and wife know who makes more money. Every husband and
Yes.
wife know who does more chores. Every husband and wife know who has a more expensive wardrobe, who has more jewelry, who has more accessories, who has a more
Yes.
expensive car,
Mhm.
who has, more influence. Who, you know what I mean? It's this invisible competition. And I feel like some of the lesson learned, in this Aisha conversation, you got to kill competition in your marriage,
That's good.
because if you don't kill it, it can become big. It can become bigger than what it needs to be. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And we've seen that competition play itself out.
And I wanna ask you, but how does that start? Right? How does that competition like, if someone was trying to avoid the landmines of competition.
My favorite saying now, it's about being self-aware.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I just got finished ministering, a word at that men's conference, and I taught
Mhm.
a message on soul excavation. And Andy Stanley has a book entitled Enemies of the Heart. And one of the enemies that he talks about is jealousy. So again, it's like if you're looking at your spouse and you start to feel any level of jealousy or resentment, you got to check it. You got to deal
Hmm.
with it inside of yourself. You know what I mean? To me, that's how he be. But if you don't check it, that thing can grow and blossom.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then it can go from jealousy to resentment to bitterness to anger, to whatever else comes next. So to
Mhm.
me, that's where you got to check it. And again, we could just imagine, you walking into Chase Center Arena
Mhm.
in San Francisco and you walking by a life-size picture of your husband, Steph Curry, and you like, he ain't all that.
Mhm.
We gotta check the person needs to check that. Yeah, you can converse, with your spouse about it, but before you even go to your spouse, you need to check your heart and
Mhm.
say, "Man, where is this feeling coming from? Is it validated? Is it justified? Or is it the enemy?"
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We understand the battlefield of the mind is real. So to me, that's where this stuff has to begin because a lot of times people will say things after they've already meditated on it.
Yes,
It's
sure.
already in the person's heart. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth
Mm.
speaks. You know what I mean? And I remember and I'm switching lanes here,
That's
obviously.
okay.
but I'm at the
We at
house.
home.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch lanes real quick.
Say what you wanna say. You at
My
home.
my favorite, the Power series.
Yes.
Amari Hardwick and who was Ghost and his wife Tasha, there were a lot of as their marriage continued to erode over the seasons, they would get into some very nasty conversations.
Mhm.
And, you know, they would kind of get into arguments about who each other would have been if they weren't together. I help you become the
Sure.
white collar dope kingpin.
Sure.
You was a corner boy. Well, I snatched you out the project. You know what I mean? So
Right.
they would get but again, those conversations, those statements, they were birthed in the heart of the spouse.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And, back to Ayesha Curry, and again, I pray that I'm sure they've had multiple conversations about this.
Multiple conversations
And
and PR people and
yeah,
everything
so
else.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
pray that, they'll get on one page
Yeah.
and one accord,
Yes.
but you can't, and this is what you and I know as a husband and wife, you can't take back words that you say.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And again, as a man, I would have felt disrespected. I would have felt
Mhm.
disrespected. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like, wow, you know what I mean? I'm doing this
Mhm.
for the sake of this family. We got these beautiful babies, and you telling us that you actually desired a different life?
Mm.
You can't unhear that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I guess, for you, Jamila, let's just keep it a buck. Like when you look at our family,
Mhm.
do you ever like imagine who you would be if you weren't like burdened down with us? Like, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
even if you don't, does the enemy come in with those try and plant those thoughts? Because that's
Mhm.
the thing. We know the fiery darts come,
Right. Right.
Ephesians 6. We know that they come.
Sure.
Just because they don't land doesn't mean they don't come.
That's
So why
right.
don't you talk about help Aisha out a little bit, or if you can, or share your process.
Yeah, you know what? It's so interesting, um, because I wanna say this delicately, and I think they did a good job of threading this in the podcast. Some people are people that, especially women, as I'll say from that perspective, are women that grow up with this fantasy of being married and this fantasy of being a wife, of being a mother, of being
Okay.
all of these things. And so that was not something I necessarily fantasized about. It was
Okay.
something that I desired,
Okay.
but not something that I fantasized about. So when motherhood came and when becoming a wife came and all these things, they were just natural progressions of our relationship,
Yeah.
of where we were, just a natural next step.
Mhm.
But I will say, because when you start talking about competition, and I want to bring this back to your remembrance, and you and I have talked about this, but it's been a number of years, is that within our marriage, I am the one that's the personality. So when you talk about the roles people play in
Yeah,
marriages
yeah.
and the posture that happens
Mhm.
and all of these things. So I am the one that snatches the mic, right? That was the dynamic of our marriage. And when you got in ministry and
Mhm.
you were the one snatching the mic, I said,
Mhm.
you're a little shocked at my sister. I said, hold up, wait a minute. Hold up, wait a minute, right?
Mhm.
And as you were speaking about that competition and about
Mhm.
having to kind of check that internal thing,
Yeah.
that was a moment for me in our marriage where I had to check that internal thing because that was somewhat of a renegotiation of our contract. That was a renegotiation of
Yeah,
our
that's good. That's good. And that's a
roles
skill
to
to renegotiate. That's a whole separate episode. That's good.
and these are unspoken contracts, right? It's not
Yes.
that you and I ever
Yeah.
sat down and said, "Well,
We
I'm the
didn't have
one, you
agents that
know,
brought us to the
no,
negotiating
I'm the one with
table.
the personality, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
like the silent, stoic, quiet type,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
whatever." And so it's not that that was something that was ever planned or
Yeah.
discussed or whatever. But as life went on, and as we did other things, and as we grew and matured,
Mhm.
there was a change and a shift in that dynamic.
Yeah.
And when it started to happen in those early years, I did have a, hold up,
Mm.
that's not standing up in applause. That's me. That's
Yeah.
me. That's
Wow.
not you.
Wow.
That's me.
Wow.
And so it was, and as you were talking about that silent having to
Competition.
check your,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah.
having to check yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really was, and I thank God for this, and this is the Holy Ghost. It really was, number one, anybody that knows Rufus Chambers personally, this is no cap for the cameras and all
Mhm.
everything we got set up today at the house. I know about the anointing of God because I know who you are privately and I know who
Mhm.
you are when you minister. And that is vastly two different people.
Yeah.
And so I am like, oh, that's God.
Mhm.
Because there would be nothing in Rufus's natural personality that would have that be a
Yeah.
reality or have
Yeah.
that come
For
out or come
sure.
to fruition if it wasn't God. So
Yeah.
I am totally clear. And because this is God's business
Mm.
and God is stepping
That's
in
good.
with his man and doing his work in your life. At the same time, he had to do that work in my life so that together
Yeah.
we would understand what that shift
Yeah.
was.
That's good.
And so I thank God that as he made the shift and transformation in you, he concurrently was making that shift and
Wow.
transformation in me because we had to
Yeah. Yeah.
flip
That's
that thing
good.
up.
That's good. That's
And I
good.
had to learn to be the cheerleader. And I had to learn to be the person in the audience clapping and celebrating for you,
Yeah.
where you had done that for me for some and still do it for me.
Yeah.
So, but had done that naturally for me for so many years. And so I think there's that conversation. And so if I had to encourage Aisha, and I think my parents are great examples of this. My mom and dad talk about it all the time, having been married 50 plus years, that there are seasons. My dad will say right now, I am supporting your mom
Mm.
and what she desires in this season because that is what she did for me
Mm. That's
for
good.
all of
That's
these
good.
years.
That's good.
And so if I had to encourage Aisha in any way, basketball doesn't last always. And
He's
there
on
will
the down.
come
He's on the downshift.
and there will come a season
Yeah. Yeah.
when that renegotiation
Yes.
happens within the marriage, and people grow and they evolve and they have different business endeavors and
Yeah, all of that.
life endeavors and all the things. And when you got a good one, they'll play their part
That's good.
in different seasons.
Yeah.
But right now, here's the thing that we know, and even having a daughter that's an artist, and even our older daughter with her career aspirations, we know when it's time to put our mics down as parents and turn these lights off
Yeah.
and be about these kids,
That's true.
because
True.
we only have so much time
Yeah.
to invest in them.
Yes.
Within our marriage, we know when it's time to do the Jamila thing,
Yeah.
do the Rufus thing, and now with love, we're doing the us thing.
Yeah.
And so knowing when it's time to say, Rufus is working on his doctorate right now. He don't have time to,
Yeah.
but that's temporary.
Absolutely.
Dr. Chambers became Dr. Chambers in the spring. That's temporary. That was a season.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe some of those comments were not having the longevity
That's good.
of the
That's
seasonality
good.
of all of these
Yes.
things.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say to Ayesha. Now, as far as getting the attention,
Well,
honey,
yeah.
that's time today.
Careful. Yeah.
And careful.
Yeah, be careful
And
with that.
careful.
Yeah.
And careful. And we get what we can handle
Yeah.
too.
That's true. That's true.
Because with a
true.
certain amount of attention comes a certain amount of responsibility and
And
things to navigate.
and let me just interject something, because I think another blind spot that she has is she had the luxury of pausing her career aspirations for the sake of her husband and children. That was an option because you guys can financially do it. A lot of women, that's not even a financial option.
No,
My husband drive Metro.
that's right.
Guess what? I'm taking 2 months off, 2 or 3 months off.
Yep,
What is it, FMLA?
that's right.
And I'm going back to my
That's
job
right.
because financially I have to do that.
That's right.
So her having this mindset of who she thought she was going to become
Sure.
is still rooted in a certain level of privilege
Yes.
that is a disconnect from normal folk, a lot of normal folk, you know what I mean? And I categorize myself as normal
Yeah.
folk,
Yeah.
ain't no two,
Yeah.
300, $400 million contract,
Not yet,
that,
unless our sponsors want to
yeah,
give us one.
exactly,
We're happy to
exactly. Oh,
have
really?
that happen. Yes.
Hey. So,
But the disconnect
there's a
with the privilege
disconnect there.
conversation. Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's what's so funny in listening to some of these podcast platforms and some of these statements that people are making. Some of it is wild.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, wow, but that's how people think. That's the other
Yes.
thing. People are saying how they really think, but some of their thinking is categorically off.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But I like what you said, about the seasonal element of how she feels today,
Yes.
because again, that season is going to
It
change
does.
here shortly.
It does.
I mean, I tell all my friends, Steph Curry has given the NBA and the Golden State Warriors
Yes.
all that he can give them.
Absolutely.
He owes them nothing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He's
Yes.
walking away with some paper now, but
Yes.
I'm just saying. So I
Yes.
don't, a couple
But
more
if you were to walk
years.
away from the game today, he owes nothing. Yeah.
And I don't know what their aspirations are post,
Sure.
NBA, but
Sure.
but now that's a good
Sure.
point. And I guess we could get ready to land the plane here,
Mhm.
but I would, if I could, speak to Steph Curry,
Yes.
I think my advice would be to really try and understand the meditation of his wife's heart.
Yes.
You know, don't run past it, but really pause and engage.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? To really understand how Aisha's feeling, why she feels that way,
Mhm.
and how they together can negotiate a path forward,
Yeah.
that obviously honors her, but also honors him and their children.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I know a lot of times us husbands, you know, we may hear you, but we may not be listening.
Oh,
Or you know what I'm saying?
you know what? I'm
So
glad we
yeah,
got that on
yeah,
video.
yeah. So all I'm saying is Steph, if you hear this for some reason, I would
Somebody tag Steph in the
I would
comments.
I would pause and really try and understand, and I think sometimes, us men and women too, we hear that and we want to start defending
Sure.
ourselves.
Sure.
And before getting into defense, I would really try and seek to understand.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? What is the true meditation of her heart?
Mhm.
And even if some of those, because you and I know a husband and wife can be talking, or a couple could be talking, and they're trying to explain the meditation of their heart,
Mhm.
and as they're explaining it, they will understand the flaw in
Yes.
themselves and
Yes.
course correct.
Yes.
So sometimes active listening can really be a tool in the toolkit of effective relationships. Now
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
a whole
Mhm.
that may be a separate episode. The toolkit. What's in the toolkit?
Renegotiation,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
toolkit,
Come on, somebody. Active listening.
active listening.
Praise the
Yes,
Lord.
for sure.
But
For
but
sure.
anyway, this is. I feel like we can keep on. We can keep on, but I'm the timekeeper, so
Timekeeper
so
is
so
keeping time.
so we're gonna
Yes.
land the plane
Yes.
right up in here. I'll give you the last
Yes.
word.
Yes.
I'll give you the last word.
Yes. Well, we certainly were talking a bit in jest at the end about some of those tools and some of
Mhm.
those methodologies and some of those things. But really, I think the part that I want to drive home is that if you are feeling like there's competition
Mm,
within your marriage,
yeah,
or if you were feeling a bit of jealousy or disconnect with your spouse, really, really seek to look inside yourself and ask yourself some tough questions, because even if your partner can set the table for you and try to make you feel as comfortable as
yeah,
possible,
that's true.
and try to make all the provisions available, Steph Curry still is who he is. And so there is a way that he walks throughout the world, and there's a way the world receives him
Yes.
that is not going to change, even if, I try within my marriage to do everything
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
that I know how to do, like within my own power. And so, really, it is, kind of affirming to yourself and being solid and confident in yourself about, dare I say it, the position we play
Yeah.
in the season that we're in.
Absolutely.
And then having that full trust and confidence that, when it's time to switch positions and when the seasons change and all the things, that, the person that you're with and your partner will be there to support you in those endeavors. So
Absolutely.
that's my final word.
Absolutely. Excellent.
That's my
Excellent.
final
Well, we're
word.
going to thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of With Love, the Chambers. We appreciate your continued viewership, your continued listenership. Do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button. Help us get the word out that there's a husband and wife, Rufus and Jamila, that are having some engaging conversations that are being curated to be a blessing to your life. And we will see you again real soon on the same channel, same time. God bless.
This episode of With Love, the Chambers is proudly sponsored by the Watts of Power Foundation, where passion and purpose come together to empower the next generation. In the heart of Los Angeles, one foundation is changing the future of education. The Watts of Power Foundation, founded by Dr. Peter Watts Jr., is on a mission to raise up the next generation of Black male educators, building strong teachers, strong families, and strong communities. Through mentorship, housing, and holistic support, Watts of Power is lighting the path toward equity in education. Visit wattsofpowerfoundation.org to learn how you can help power the change. The Watts of Power Foundation, where teaching meets transformation. A big thank you to Watts of Power for supporting this episode of With Love, the Chambers.
That's a wrap for today's episode of With Love, the Chambers.
We hope you laughed, learned, and felt encouraged along the way.
If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs a little love and wisdom today.
You can also connect with us online on all social media platforms at Rufus Chambers Online and at Jamila Chambers. We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time,
Keep living, keep laughing, and keep learning with love, the Chambers.